Okay, so the objectives of our lesson today, the inherent powers of the government, is expecting the viewers and the learners to be able to determine the inherent powers of the state and to understand how the inherent powers of the state works. So what are the inherent powers of the state? So first thing first, what does it mean by inherent? Okay? Inherent, it means that it is an essential character of something, meaning without this, the state will not be complete. Though you have your government, your people, your territory, and your people, if the powers of the government is not there, particularly these inherent powers, then that state will not be complete. Okay, so inherent also means that it is belonging by nature or existing in someone. So it is now the nature of every state that they have certain powers. Okay, and inherent could also be referring to something as permanent and inseparable element or inseparable quality or attribute. So you cannot remove the inherent powers of the state from the state, otherwise the state will fail. Okay, so yun ang ibig sabihin ng inherent. Yan ay napakahalaga at hindi mo pwedeng tanggalin sa isang estado yung kapangyarihan na yan, otherwise mapaparalyze ang buong estado. So what are the three inherent powers of the state? We have already mentioned that earlier. You have the police power, the power of eminent domain, and you have the power of taxation. So let us discuss them one by one. Okay, so what is police power? Police power is the power of the state to promote public welfare by restraining and regulating the use of liberty and property. So, as I have mentioned a while back, the citizens have freedom, have rights. However, make it sure that the exercise of freedom and exercise of rights should not be encroaching on the rights of others. Just like the example which I have given in the earlier video, in which we have the right to sing along with our karaokes or with our videokes or karaokes for that matter. However, see to it that you are not encroaching on the rights of other people to have a blissful and peaceful night. Kaya dito sa Baguio, merong tinatawag na silent night ordinance upang pigilan at i-regulate yung mga nagkakantahan at mga nag-iingay sa gabi. Actually, ini-include dyan yung mga pagtatrabaho sa gabi hanggang 10 o'clock ng gabi, yung mga nagpupukpok or anumang klaseng trabaho sa gabi na malalakas ang sounds sa pagmamartilyo and like that, ay dapat ma-restrain sila or ma-stop para sa kabutihan ng pangkalahatan. And it is the most pervasive, meaning ito yung pinakamalimit na ina-apply or ito yung pinakamaraming nagagamit na kapangyarihan ng ating gobyerno. And it is the least limitable, meaning ito yung hindi siya masyadong nare-restrict na power ng ating government, unlike with other powers like the power of taxation and the power of eminent domain. So pwedeng ma-regulate yung mga kapangyarihan na yon in we call it some circumstances, but not the police power. And it is the most demanding of the three powers, meaning ito yung kailangan, ito yung mas pinakanid ng government natin because in a particular government, if the people are not obedient to the rules and regulations, there will be chaos or there will be disorder in the society. So napakahalaga yung police power. That's why in all governments in in the world, they have created their police organizations na napakarami yung kanilang police personnel aside from the regular police personnel still in other executive branches of the government. Okay, mayroon pa rin silang mga police power doon. Okay, and of course, aside from that, nandun pa rin yung kanilang armed forces to assist and support the police organizations of every world to exact obedience from the citizenry. So the police power regulates not only property, but more importantly, the liberty of private persons and virtually all the people. Okay? So when we exercise our property to use our property or to abuse our property, so we have the right to use our property, but see to it that you are not we call it encroaching on the property of others. Or you have the right to burn your property, but see to it that when you burn your property, you are not burning the property of others. Okay? So there are regulations like that. That's if you are going to burn your own property, okay, you cannot you cannot file a case against yourself because that is your own property. However, if the burning of your property endangers the properties nearby, then you can be uh, criminal liable by arson or burning one's property to burn other, okay, or resulting to the destruction of other property. So may mga tinatawag natin regulation yan. So you can use, you can misuse, and you can abuse your property, but provided you are not encroaching on the properties of others, or you are not restraining others from the exercise of their own liberties and rights. So again, police power is we call it the power, okay, in which the person's acts and acquisitions are hemmed in by the police power. Meaning, whatever na ginagawa ng mga tao, whatever na binibili natin, or so, whatever, no? So for example, we have the right to own a property, to buy a property. That's part of our economic and social property. However, titignan mo rin kung anong binibili mo, if that is, we call it detrimental to the community, okay, where you are residing, well, i-restrict ka ng ating government. Say for example, yung power generator, electric power generator, and you have the right to own that. However, mayroong mga restrictions na ibibigay ng ating government, and they will see to it that you are going to obey on those restrictions, because using an electric power generator will not only cause noise pollution in the community, but it may also cause air pollution, okay, because of the toxic gases coming out from the exhaust of the electric power generator. So, hindi basta-basta na ikaw ay bibili ng iyong electric power generator. May mga requirements diyan, okay, na binibigay ng ating government, okay, through the health services and the DNR, kung saan mo dapat ilalagay yung mga power generator mo para hindi ka istorbo at hindi ka nakakasira sa ating kalikasan. So, the police power, okay, it will regulate the person's acts and accusations. Okay, so that is basically the police power. What else? Okay, the Latin maxim, sic utire tuo aut alienum non laedas, means that, okay, you have to use your own property in such a way that you do not injure other people's property. So that is what I already mentioned a while back. Okay, so the voice of the people is Vox Populi, Vox Dei. Okay, so let's move on. There are justifications of the police power. There are justifications of the police power purposely for the subordination of individual benefit to the interest of the greater number. When you say subordination of individual benefit, okay, it means to say that mababawasan ang natawag natin ang paggamit mo sa yung property. Masusubordinate yung individual benefit, yung pakinabang mo sa yung property ay mababawasan for the interest of the greater number of the people in the community. Okay, so there are two, we call it legal maxims. First is the salus populi est suprema lex, coming from Cicero. It means that the welfare of the people is the ultimate law. So, the welfare of the people, yung kabutihan ng mga tao, ang pinakamataas na batas. Okay? So, now in discussing the legality of the action of the police, whether it is legal or not, the basis would be, is it for the welfare of the people? Okay, so that would be the general consideration. In discussing issues of legality, the question of what will truly benefit the people is not merely always relevant, but in fact, okay, it deserves the highest consideration. So it should be the first consideration among other else. Na? Kung tama nga ba yung gagawing pag-demolish, kung tama ba yung gagawing natawag nating forced evacuation, no? Tulad ng nangyari itong kumbaga itong nakaraan na mga kalamidad natin, maraming nasira. Yung iba namatay kasi hindi sila sumunod sa forced evacuation. Okay, so kasi if you are forcibly evacuated, meaning madidiminish yung paggamit mo sa bahay mo ng 1 or 2 or 3 days. Okay, however, for the greater welfare, para ba sa kabutihan mo yan? So pwede kang tawag natin pilitin ng ating government to vacate your house for that moment. Okay? So again, what about the second, we call it Latin maxim, the sic otere toot alienum non lidas. So you use your property as not to injure the property of others. I have already mentioned that. So in Mahatma Gandhi's writing, he used this legal maxim. He said that use your property so you do not harm others is a grand doctrine, meaning ito yung pinakamataas na doktrina ng buhay. And it should be the basis of harmonious relationship between neighbors, sabi niya. Para merong magandang samahan sa neighborhood, sa komunidad, kailangan isipin mo palagi na yung paggamit mo sa yung mga properties is not injurious or it may not cause damage to the properties and to the lives and health of other people. And of course, there is what you call an issue whether the actions of the government in implementing a law is proper or not. So somehow, kapag mali yung pagkilos, mali yung action ng ating government, pwede naman silang kasuhan ng negligence ng taong bayan. Pwede rin sila ang managot sa taong bayan. So more or less, the government will have to test the validity of the police measures that they are going to take. Okay, kaya pinag-uusapan yan, i-demolish ba natin yung lugar na yan? Yan ba ay ating bubuldosurin yung bundok na yan? So, pag-uusapan nila kasi mahirap na baka mamaya, okay, the people in the government will be violating the constitutionality of their actions. Okay? So, normally, nagkakaroon yan ng mga legal forum or pwedeng sa korte pupunta yan. So, depende. Depending on how sensitive the matter is. So, the interests of the public generally, as distinguished from those of a particular class, require the exercise of the police power. Okay? So, there you are. Yung interest, yung kabutihan ng tao, publico means that's people. Okay? Yun generally ang unang consideration. Ayan. Yung kailangan ba nating evacuate, kailangan ba nating i-demolish yung lugar na yan, kailangan ba nating i-disperse yung mga nagrarayot na yan, mga nag-strike na yan. And of course, they should also consider the means employed, whether is it reasonably necessary. In other words, wala na bang ibang paraan para ma-save yung greater number of people in the area? Yan na lang ba ang kaparaanan? Wala na bang ibang means? Wala na bang ibang ways upang maipatupad yung natawag natin greater welfare of the community? Okay? And ito bang ating gagawin? Hindi ba ito oppressive upon individuals? Hindi ba ito may kasamang pang-aabuso sa kanila? So titignan yon. Otherwise, pag hindi nila titignan yan, baka later on mag-boomerang sa ating mga government officials yung action na gagawin nila in connection to the exercise of the police power. So the second power of the government is called the power of eminent domain. When you say eminent, yan yung pinakamataas. Domain, maraming ibig sabihin ng domain. Pwedeng condemnation. Condemnation in the sense that you are going to condemn that property so that it will be used for the public, for the welfare of the public. Okay, domain can also be referring to yung paghahari ng ating government sa ating property, sa ating territory. So this is the power to expropriate, meaning that is to use private properties for public use. Anything that come under the dominion of man is subject to expropriation. So in other words, anumang bagay na pag may-ari mo, dominion, meaning you are the lord of it, okay, because you own it, okay? So lahat yan can be subjected to expropriation, okay, if the public welfare is necessary to be promoted. Okay? So pwedeng sirain yung property mo. Yan. Okay? So it says here in our cartoon image, sabi niya diyan, rest assured your property will be used for projects vital to the public interest. Napakahalaga sa interest ng public, especially the public interested. No, that's a joke actually. But of course, the idea here is that wala kang magawa kung yan ay natawag natin, nag-decide ang court na kailangan ma-condemn yung iyong property so that it can be used by the government for public purposes. Don Mariano built a public park in his hacienda for the enjoyment of the people in his community. However, the proposed expressway to be built by the government will cut across the said public park. Insofar as the power of the state is concerned, which of the following is correct? So ito, si Don Mariano, meron siyang property sa hacienda niya, ginawa niya itong public park. In other words, binapagamit na niya ito para sa publiko. Ngayon, may project ang government na gagawa ng expressway at tatamaan yung public park ngayon. Okay? So, ano dapat ang tama na gagawin ng government in connection with the power of the government of power of eminent domain? Ito ba ay kanilang bubuldoserin na? Kasi yung expressway na yan is for the greater welfare of the public. Okay? Bubuldoserin na ba yan? Ayan. So, anong kailangan? Said property can outrightly be expropriated by the government? Of course, no. Yan. Said property cannot be expropriated because it is already for public use? No. The said public park can be expropriated through national legislation. Okay? Or the said public park cannot be expropriated because it is a private property. The answer there is letter C. Okay? So, since ginagamit na yan for, we call it for public purposes, now, kailangan yan ng national legislation kung maaari. Now, pag sabing national legislation, yan yung gagawa ng batas for that purpose na yung public park na yan na donate ng isang tao or private area pero ginawang public park yan, public place, ginawang public place ng owner ng private property na yan, ay gagawan yan ngayon ng Republic Act, okay? Na yan ay i-reconvert. Public park na yan, i-reconvert nila, sisirain nila yan para dadaanan ito ng expressway. So that is the remedy for that private property used for public park. Okay, it can be expropriated only by national legislation or, okay, under a specific grant of authority to delegate. Yan, okay? Or under a specific grant of authority to, in other words, dapat merong natawag natin, maaring ito ay magbigay ng letter na i-grant na niya as a donation to the government. Yan. Okay, so it includes real and personal, tangible and intangible properties. Okay, yun ang mga kasali sa eminent domain. Lahat ng properties mo. Yan. Kapag yan ay tinatawag natin, kahit personal property mo yan or real property mo, okay, kung yan ay kinakailangan tanggalin, para magamit for private use. Okay, so assuming meron kang antenna diyan ng radio communication mo, tatanggalin yan para maglagay sila ng cable car, dadaan doon, hindi maiwasan. So, the government can exercise its power of eminent domain. So, again, as we have said, property already devoted for public use is still subject to expropriation provided this is done directly by national registration or under a specific grant of authority. Okay, so pwedeng magbigay ng specific grant through perhaps donation, probably. So, what about the power of taxation? So, taxation, so in the right side, you have in there the government provides services. So, sino ang magbabayad sa government? Sino ang tinatawag natin? Sino ang magpapasweldo sa government? And remember na sa anumang project na ginagawa natin, even in our personal project, napakahalaga yung budget. Napakahalaga yung amount para makapag-move ka sa yung project. Kailangan ng mga resources, particularly financial resources. So in the social contract theory, as I've mentioned earlier in my earlier video, na ang mga tao ay nag-agree to come together and form a government. Okay? So they created a government that will provide for the services, and the people in return will we call it pay their revenues or taxes to the government so that the government can give the due services to the people. So that is the social contract theory of governance. Okay? So taxes are enforced proportional contributions from persons and property. What does it mean by proportional contributions? Ang ibig sabihin niyan, the greater the amount of your property, the greater the amount of your tax, something like that. The greater the amount of your salary, the greater the amount of your tax. Yun ang ibig sabihin niyan. So, proportional. Okay? And levied by the state by virtue of its power, meaning ito ay ibinibigay natin or kinukuha, ina-apply ng ating gobyerno through its power of taxation so that it can support the government and for all public needs, which I have already mentioned. Importance of taxation derives from the unavoidable obligation of the government to protect the people. Hindi pwedeng ang government natin ay nandun lang na paupo-upo. Mayroon silang obligation to protect and serve the people. So how could they do it without funds, without resources? Well, it will be coming from the people. The people are subjected to the reciprocal duty. So when you say reciprocal, in return, that's the idea. I protect you, and how are you going to reciprocate my protection to you as my people? Then you are going to pay tax. So that is the reciprocal duty. When you say duty, the people has no choice but to do it because duty is something to be done. If you fail to do your duty, you can be liable for an act of omission by failure to perform your duty to pay your tax. Taxes are the nation's lifeblood, no? Kapag wala ka ng dugo, ay sigurado patay ka. Ayan. And unless ikaw ay zombie, no? Pero just like our government, ang pinaka lifeblood niyan ay yung ating mga taxes. So through which government agencies continue to operate and with which the state discharges its functions for the welfare of its constituent. And to sustain the tax, it is necessary to show that the proceeds are devoted to a public purpose. Meaning, para patuloy ang pagbabayad ng mga tao ng mga taxes is dapat may makita nila, may makita silang tangible or mga evidence na talagang ginagamit yung taxes for public purposes. Di ba? Kaya hindi tama yung mayroong ginagawang kino-construct na kalsada, highway sa inyo, tapos yung picture ni mayor or ni congressman na nandun. Hindi pwede yun. Dapat nakalagay doon, this is where your tax are used. Parang ganon. Okay? Yun ang, the money used for this purpose is from the taxpayers' money. Parang ganon. Para nakikita ng taong bayan. Kaya minsan, hindi maiwasan na yung mga working class or the people, hindi maiwasan na tawag natin kukupitan nilang government when it comes to tax. Kasi kung nakita lang napupunta sa corruption, kulang napupunta sa public service, basically, may mga tao na sinusurchange yung government natin sa pagbabayad ng mga taxes. The power of taxation, well, these are some of the legalities, courtesy of the batasnatin.com. If you would like to research on some legalities of your subject, you can use the batasnatin.com. Marami silang legal examples doon, mga cases, para ma-enlighten pa kayo sa ating mga subject, sa hindi lamang sa human rights, but even in other subjects in criminology, particularly subjects with legal aspect. So, according to the Mactan Cebu International Airport versus Marcos, it is an incident. So, taxation is an incident of sovereignty. The power of taxation is an incident of sovereignty. Pag sinabi mong sovereignty, ikaw yung hari ng bansa mo. Ikaw, the government is the king of this country. And it should be, it's unlimited in its range. No? Meaning lahat yan ay dapat taksan lahat na nandito sa Pilipinas, provided they are taxable. Acknowledging its very nature, no limits, so that security against its abuse is to be found only in the responsibility of the legislature, which imposes the tax on the constituency that is to pay it. Okay? So, there should be a security against its abuse, meaning kailangan mabantayan. Mabantayan yung taxation natin. Okay? Dapat istriktuhan nila yan. Okay? Okay? Because otherwise, it will be the responsibility of those who made the tax law. Yan. Yung pagkukulang, pag walang tawag natin, walang protection or walang security yung ating process of taxation. Kaya yung mga New People's Army, okay, and other rebel groups in the country, wala silang karapatan na kukuha ng revolutionary tax sa mga tao. Kasi they are not the Lord, they are not sovereign to this country. The duly recognized country is, of course, the only sovereign government in this country, in this state. Okay? So further in the Proton Filipinas Corporation versus Republic of the Philippines, and these are cases of taxes, and citing province of Tarlac versus Alcantara, the power of taxation is based on the principle that taxes are the lifeblood of the government and their prompt and certain availability is an imperious need. In other words, wag i-delay. Kaya nga may mga tawag natin deadline ng pagbabayad ng tax. Kaya kapag di ka nakapagbayad ng tax mo sa deadline mo, sa due date mo, ay merong interest yan. That is the purpose. Kasi importante na magbayad ka agad yung taong bayan so that the government can act right away on their projects. That is the idea. And further, in the power of taxation, under the NPC versus City of Cabanatuan, the theory behind the exercise of the power to tax emanates from necessity, meaning kailangan, it's necessary, it's necessity. No? Mga pangailangan ng ating government. So without taxes, government cannot fulfill its mandate of promoting the general welfare and well-being of the people. We are questioning the train law, no? The tax reform acceleration law natin. Kine-question natin yan. But did you know na yung train law na yan, yan ang reason or yan ang dapat gamitin ng government para may revenue ng government. Kasi ang nangyari dyan, during the time of President Ramos, ini-start ng government na ipagbili yung mga government-owned corporations and government-owned properties. Pinagbili nila yung Fort Bonifacio, the large portion of the Fort Bonifacio, naging global city, napakarami pa. Ang nangyari yan, yung ating government, wala na siyang business. Kukunti na lang yung business ng ating government kasi na-privatize na, pinagbili sa private. Even the Philippine Airlines, the Philippine National Bank, na nabili ng mga majority shares niya na ninalosyutan. So na-privatize, so wala nang business ang government natin. Importante na mayroong government on the companies and corporations and properties na mag-generate ng revenue for the government. So in the absence of those government properties, government-owned corporations, government-owned businesses, saan ngayon kukuha ang government ng tax kundi kailangan sa tao. Kaya nagkaroon tayo ng further reform sa ating taxation through the train law para matawag natin, masuportahan ng ating government yung mga pinapangako nila na free education like that. Okay? Just like accordingly, tumaas ang presyo ng soft drinks by 1 peso. So accordingly, yung pagtaas na 1 peso na yan, so 15,000 ang ina-allocate ng government. 15,000 pesos ang ina-allocate ng government na na para sa bawat senior high student, okay, na nag-enroll sa mga public schools and private schools. So mayroong 15,000. So saan kukuha? Kada 15,000 tao na bibili ng soft drinks, iinom ng soft drinks, ay napupunta yun sa isang estudyante. So how many students, how many million of students, senior high school student, saan kukuha niyan? Okay? But of course, I'm not saying na yung pagtaas ng Coke ay para lang sa estudyante, but that's only an example na kailangan talaga ng ating government ng mga taxes natin. Okay? So it goes, the power of taxation and the power of police power, nagkakasama yan. Kasi kahit meron tayong power of taxation, kung hindi na-enforce yung taxation, walang police power, hindi maging effective ang ating power of taxation. So number 10, which of the following is not true concerning the right or power of the state to tax the people? Okay, it's not true. Taxes are necessary for the government to protect the people. That's correct. Public service is reciprocated by the duty of the people to pay their taxes to the government. That's correct. And the government cannot perform its functions without revenues from the people. That is correct. Letter D, that is wrong because it is not the most pervasive. What is the most pervasive? Again, the most pervasive is the police power. Okay? So that's it for the eminent powers of the government. Okay?